Good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Zoe Japan podcast. This is Aneri, and I'm so happy to be back in the studio with you today. And I have a surprise because we have someone new in the studio today. So, Emba, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Aneri. So, my name is Emba. I've been in Japan for 10 years, and I joined Zoe as a Zoe volunteer last year. So, I'm so excited to be with you and be doing this podcast together today.
Emba will be taking the very important role of podcast host today. So, Emba, over to you.
So again, thank you. And today's topic is the host club industry in Japan. So maybe an issue that might be very new to a lot of us. I know personally for me, it was new 2 years ago when I started walking around this area of Tokyo. We'd really like to dive into this issue, shed some light, and see how, together we can learn more about this very important topic. So, Annalie, let's start with just the basics of this industry. What is a host and what are host clubs?
I think this is something that is maybe familiar to some of our listeners in Asia, but from your typical Western type countries, I think there's a lot of surprise when we use the word host club or host. Maybe hostess is more common, but
Right.
host is very unique, especially in Japan. So firstly, if we look at a host is an entertainer. It's usually an attractive young man, and his role is to provide companionship and to flirt with female customers. And they are really, really gifted at making these women feel special and appreciated. They notice that haircut that you had that no one else notices. And they're great at just singing karaoke and serving drinks and creating a really fun and flirtatious environment.
So kind of like a Prince Charming.
Exactly. Very well groomed. They have a specific dress code. Very specific look, the hosts, especially here in Japan.
I've seen so many billboards in this particular area. So yeah, I can very much relate to this side of it. It looks very glitzy and glamorous. So sort of delving deeper into the actual hosts themselves, why do you think these Japanese young men choose to become hosts?
So I think it's a very, very complicated answer to that question, Emma. And maybe one of the reasons is financial motivation. Some of these young men find themselves in a lot of debt, and they're desperate to find a job where they are going to earn a lot of money quickly, which is not always the case, and we'll talk more about that later. Others really just want to make a lot of money. It can be very lucrative if you're very successful.
Yeah, it's a big industry, isn't it?
Very, very big industry. We can touch on the size of the industry in a moment. Others, I think there might be more of an emotional need, that they really just want to be wanted, want to have female love and affection and be the guy that they've always dreamt of being. So there's that opportunity for them to take on that role and to be the confident young man that is loved by women. And a lot of these young men just simply don't have a good male role model. Maybe they didn't have a good father figure in their lives, and they simply don't know how they should behave around women and what is okay and not okay in terms of emotional manipulation of women.
Wow, that's really eye-opening. And yeah, personally for me, I saw one video testimonial of a Tokyo host, and he actually shared from his experience. He said people like me who've had a hard life, basically coming from a broken family background, come to this entertainment district in Tokyo called Kabukicho, basically to start over, to look for this new life, which, as we're going to delve into, it might not be the actual true life that they're looking for. So we've sort of delved into a little bit about, why hosts become hosts. So let's look a little bit about, the actual customers, the clients. So who are the clients and why do they flock in droves to this world?
And you're saying flock in droves. There are many host clubs, maybe as many as 900 or more.
Wow, that many.
And they're all over the country and usually in the adult entertainment areas. And more than 20,000 hosts, I think, are the estimates. So it's a lot of young men engaging in this industry. And
Wow.
the customers are usually single women, young women. It could be girls working as office workers or businesswomen. Sometimes the women are from the sex industry. Other times they are students in college. They could be wives that are just frustrated with their marriage and they just long for male affection. They never see their husbands and they're looking for that male attention. And unfortunately, we are increasingly seeing minors. So children under 18 years old, and they become customers of these host clubs. And of course, that is illegal in Japan. A child is not allowed to be a host club customer, but there are a lot of ways that some of these clubs operate in the shadows, attracting these young girls, because these hosts are really trained to be charming, to be attentive, to be conversational. So any woman that has a longing in her heart for that kind of affection can be someone that is lured to host clubs.
Yeah, because I even read that there are actual host club manuals. Can you speak a little bit about that?
You're right. It's an extremely organized industry. You don't just, it's not like taking a job as a waiter at a restaurant. You know, it's, they are very well trained, these hosts, in emotional manipulation, especially. So a host club manual is a training manual that is often given to hosts on how to engage your customer emotionally in the relationship and how to make sure she becomes loyal to you as a host or to the host club and how to get the maximum financial benefit out of her. So unfortunately, these are horrible training manuals that are available.
Really tragic. So the emotional connection is key, I guess, in terms of for this industry. So I know maybe some of us have heard of hostess clubs. So how does that emotional connection sort of play into whether it's a host club or hostess club? What is sort of the difference there?
I think there's not a clear technical definition, but just observation from us as an organization. I would say that for hostess clubs, you mainly see businessmen that are going to hostess club often together, you know, after work, and they know that they are coming to flirt and interact with these girls, and many of them go back home to their wives, or if they are not married, they just go back home to their apartments. But in a lot of cases, the understanding is that it is short term, it's for the moment. They might have their favorite hostess and they might prefer to spend time with her again, but the opposite side where we see the young women going to host clubs, it's a much stronger emotional bond. They are truly in love with this host. They believe that this is their Prince Charming and he's going to whisk her away and give her that incredible life that she's looking for a partner. So a lot stronger emotional connection.
Wow, gosh. So in terms of how these host clubs make money, because we mentioned it's such a lucrative industry. How do they make money?
Well, basically, they operate on kind of a tipping system where the customers pay for their drinks and also for the time that they spend with a host. So typically, when a girl goes to a host club for the first time, she will not have a very high fee the first time she goes because they're trying to hook her. And during that time, she is introduced to a number of these hosts and she chooses her favorite. And that is called tanto.
Tanto.
Exactly. So that is the guy that she really feels a connection with, right? And once she has decided who this person would be, next time she comes, she will pay a nomination fee to spend time with the same host again. And these hosts are waiting for these women. They're so ready for them. So they will start to encourage them to buy really expensive drinks, so high-end alcohol, significantly overpriced many, many times.
Wow.
And these purchases can result in enormous bills for these girls. Now, they're completely emotionally brainwashed. They sometimes have a lot of alcohol that they've already consumed. They don't even realize how much debt they're ranking up in that host club with the time that they're spending there. And of course, it's not only the drinks, it's the time spent and any kind of other things, other services that they would want the host to commit to as well. So the hosts earn a commission on portion of the sales, and that is serving as an incentive for them to really pressure these women into buying as much alcohol as possible. And then, of course, as they sell more, they can get a higher ranking as hosts in their clubs.
Oh, really?
So every host wants to be be the number one host in his club. That's kind of a celebrity status.
So that's why I've seen like these billboards in this part of Tokyo, like number 1, number 2, number 3 with these
Exactly. So that's the ranking of that host, and that's based on the sales. So the girls also have that emotional commitment to help this host to reach that level by doing whatever she can, which is usually then spending money on the host or at the host club.
So, some people have said, the host culture has quite a, negative impact. And in the sense that, some hosts abuse their role and, some of them end up being traffickers, actually. Could you share a little bit more about that?
You're right. And I think we have to be careful with an episode like this that we don't make the statement that all hosts are automatically bad guys and traffickers. So just to make that very clear for our listeners. But it is true that the way that the industry operates and what these young men are expected to do is to put excessive pressure on these girls to the level of where it becomes exploitation. And they're really exploiting emotional vulnerability of these women. So I think that there are many, many things that just come up in my mind in response to your question. And one thing I think that is, before we talk about them as traffickers, when you look at what a host looks like, just his appearance and the way that he behaves towards women, that really puts an unfair expectation on men in the quote-unquote real world.
That's true.
No man in the real world dresses like that, says exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, is always witty, is always in a good mood, and is always happy to see you. That's just not realistic. So when the girls are spending time with this host in that fantasy world, that becomes the standard that they're looking for, and they cannot find that outside in the real world. And I think that is really, really dangerous. And they start to believe that, I have to pay money in order to get that. So I think that's very dangerous. But because of that connection then, hosts very often become what we, in slang terms, would call a Romeo pimp, right? So we don't use that professionally, that term anymore, but a Romeo pimp is basically where he is using a romantic relationship in order to manipulate this girl into doing things that she would not normally do. So a lot of the girls, in their ambition to help the host achieve his goals, to become the number one host or achieve his sales target, they find that they don't have enough money to actually spend as much on him as they would like to. So maybe their office job, they might not be that experienced, not earning such a high salary. So a lot of them engage in the sex industry themselves, and the money that they earn out of prostituting themselves flows directly back into the pockets of the host or the host club.
Wow.
So in that way, the hosts are influencing these girls and kind of pressuring them into entering the sex industry. But it's very hard from a law enforcement point of view because you can't make a direct connection between the host and the girl working in the sex industry. It's a very difficult line for law enforcement to draw.
Yeah, I can understand what a challenge it is for law enforcement. Personally, I was very surprised to read in an article from a newspaper last year that 40% of these young women who are in the sex industry are in the industry because they need to pay back this host club debt. So it was just such a huge percentage.
Yes.
And many of them are young women in their 20s or younger.
Right. I think that some of the girls we have met in the red light areas around Tokyo have been as young as 14. And they are going to host clubs. What is a 14-year-old child doing in a place where alcohol is sold as the main sales item on offer and prostituting themselves in order to support their hosts?
Wow. I guess maybe for some people it might be new to consider that, hosts themselves can be victims. So when we look at that side of things, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. It's easy to get angry at these young men, but if we think about our conversation when we started this podcast earlier, we're talking about broken homes and these young men looking for just female affection as well, and having no role model. And I think we see that a lot. We often see that they have situation of financial desperation. They don't have another adult male that they can look towards, and they find community with other hosts that are in a similar situation.
Gosh, I never thought about it like that. Yeah.
And community is very important, especially in Japan that has a group culture, right? You want to have other people that are like-minded around you. So some of these young men start working at a host club because they think that it's their only way out of their financial situation. And by doing that, they might be forced to work really long hours, sometimes 7 days a week, unrealistic sales targets that really pressures them into manipulating the girls, and also finding themselves in debt bondage. Because very often when they take on these jobs at host clubs, it comes with housing, it comes with clothes and different things, which of course they need to pay off.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of pressure, and they are in many ways victims of labor trafficking. I think in the extreme with some of these guys.
Yeah, that is an important lens actually to consider. I remember last year, some of us went to look at this apartment in this red light district. And for me, it was the first time to even think of hosts as being victims. So this apartment had recently been vacated, according to the real estate agent, by 5 hosts who had been living there. And it was just run down. It was just like a one-room apartment. And apparently there had been, bunk beds in that one room because there was 5 hosts. And for me, there was just this spirit of heaviness and despair inside that room. And I just felt, down the street is, this area of like these glitzy host clubs. And then when these hosts come home, this is the place they come back to. It was just very eye-opening for me.
I agree. That specific apartment really changed my perspective on hosts. I remember the mold all the way up to the ceiling, and it was terrible. And no one wants to go back to that. And I remember thinking to myself, if this is my home, if I have to go back to this, it sounds much better to be out on the streets drinking until I pass out, right? Than coming back to an environment like that. So for the hosts that used to live in that apartment, it was not a glitzy, glamorous life at all.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it sort of just took off the mask, literally, of this reality of many of their daily lives. And for me also, in another example, I watched this host testimonial on YouTube, and this particular host was sharing about, he, just like everybody, everybody's looking for true love, right? So he's a host in Tokyo. He was looking for true love, for the girl of his dreams. He found this girl, but she was coming to his host club, and because, he needed to reach the targets, she would buy all these drinks, right, to raise his ranking. But she really wanted him to quit the industry, so
of course, you don't want to share your boyfriend.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But sadly, she also ended up, being in the prostitution industry, and eventually committed suicide. So it was a very sad ending to that relationship, and the host is still in the industry.
A really heartbreaking, probably a young man with a good heart, looking for love in all the wrong places.
In all the wrong places,
and then not seeing the possibility of how to survive outside of that industry.
Yeah, and for his girlfriend and all the other young women who come. So in all of this sort of looking at sort of some of the dark side of this industry, is there hope?
Is there? Definitely get to the hopeful part. There's always hope. Emma.
There's always hope. Amen. Yeah. So let's look a little bit about
I
where
think
we can find hope here.
Something that's encouraging for me is we have to give credit where credit is due. The National Police Agency in Japan have really cracked down on host clubs. We have seen a huge increase in activity where they realized the extreme exploitation happening. And I remember a news article a couple of months ago where the National Police Agency reported that they busted more than 700 host clubs. So they did raids.
700, wow.
And so they were went into these clubs and looked at their procedures and looked at their clientele and just asked the right questions. And, some of them were doing business the right way, but a lot of them were violating the law, and the police took very swift action. So that is really encouraging to see. It's not going unnoticed and action is being taken. But I think that addresses the practices of the host club industry itself, but from a victim point of view, from these young women that are lured into the industry, I really think we need to focus a lot more on the prevention education side. And not only what is a host club and why is it dangerous. A lot of these girls understand that it's dangerous, but helping them to understand that what you will find at this club is not real love. It's fantasy, it's scripted, it's not genuine, and definitely not worth paying for, right? So we have to help them understand this is not real love and actually help them to understand what is real love.
Yeah.
Where can they find real love and acceptance, and in a healthy, good way that is not going to compromise them? So when we do that and more women become equipped and empowered, then victims will start to step forward and say, I'm a victim of this industry and I need help. And there are a lot of organizations and also the police agency that are willing to reach out and willing to help these women if they come forward. So I think that's an exciting opportunity for us. But then for the young men themselves, as we've said over and over today, there's that need for mentors. There's that need for healthy male role models. And here I'm really excited to see how churches in Japan are responding.
Wow, that's great.
People are starting to prayer walk in these areas. They are developing a heart for these hosts. And I think over time we will see that outreach programs with men will start. And just helping these young men to have those healthy role models, but also to find a life outside of the industry. When they step out of that, where can they go and where can they actually have a good job opportunity that they can be passionate about and actually fulfill their calling? So it's exciting to see that things are starting to move. There's still a lot to be done, but at least for me, hopeful.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of hope right there. And personally, I've also been encouraged by, some younger men who've really, God has been moving their hearts to go and pray and also to reach out to these hosts. So that's very, very encouraging. And this is a national issue. So this is also for the church nationally in Japan to, stand in the gap and be involved. So on that hopeful note, Annalie, it looks like time is running out, but it's just been so great to delve into this very important topic and raise awareness. So if people want to learn more, find out more, where can they go?
Yeah, you did a great job, by the way, as a host for today's podcast. That was wonderful. But I think if you want to learn more, please go to our website at gozoe.jp. So that is GOZOE.jp. Or if you're not American, ZOE.jp. So please go to our website and please share this episode. This is a great way to raise awareness for people to be able to pray more effectively and get involved. So please share this episode with others. And Emma, you wrote a great blog on hosts that is available on the Zoe website. So I encourage all listeners, if you want to learn more about what is happening in this industry, please check out our blog posts and look for that host blog post and pass that on social media as well.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. See you next time.
Please support Zoe Japan. With your help, we can reach every person and rescue every child.